Hey, it's Chelsea with Wound Care University, and today I'm coming to you with a little mini chat session. And we're going to be talking about hyperbaric safety. This is something that has been in the news a lot lately, especially with what happened in Flint, Michigan. This is something that we're going to have a larger discussion on later, but it's worth having a conversation about in terms of safety culture in hyperbaric medicine. So, what we're going to talk about today is when you hear people say, but we've always done it this way, and the pitfalls that come with that, and how we can shift culture in our facilities to really emphasize the importance of safety in the hyperbaric unit. So, we're going to talk about why this is important to start with. When we have a culture that encourages shortcuts, taking the easy way out, it creates a false sense of safety. I always tell my staff that just because you've gotten away with it a couple of times doesn't mean that it's a good practice or that it's safe. The comparison I draw with them is like drinking and driving. Okay, if you've gotten away with it a couple of times, that's not a good thing. You still broke the law. Just because you didn't get into a car accident, just because you didn't get pulled over, doesn't mean that what you did was okay or right. It just means that you didn't get busted. You didn't end up getting into a wreck. It doesn't mean that anything was done well. So just because you have had near misses that ended up not being catastrophic, that doesn't mean that you can keep testing your luck and trying to see how far you can take that. The hyperbaric environment we know is particularly potentially volatile because we have oxygen, we have a lot of fuel, even though we don't mean to. It's just kind of the name of the game. Like we have a patient in there, we have linens, we have a mattress, even the clothing that they wear, we give it to them, and it's not anything that's like combustible by itself, but it will still burn. So we want to make sure that we don't have anything that could be an ignition source, a fuel source, a heat source. And we need to be really mindful of that, especially when we know that just one cotton t-shirt alone is enough to have fuel to ignite the inside of a chamber. So we have to be very careful with what we are putting inside the chamber. And just because it was okay one or two times and you had a near miss, once again, does not mean it is okay to have this continued pattern or habit. Very serious incidents happen not because someone willingly says, you know what, one day I'm just not going to care if I dive a lighter. I don't care if I dive a whole vac machine in there. Every single story we hear of fires and chamber explosions are a cumulative effect of things. The chamber is not being maintained properly, PMs not being done, being out of service dates, having an accumulation of linen and lint inside, electrical components not working, our patients not being grounded before they go in, not screening our patients before they go in the chamber. All of these little things that people get comfortable with is what adds up to there being a disaster, and that's what you end up seeing on the news, unfortunately. When I'm talking to our folks in the introductory medicine course, I always kind of compare it to flying. There are about 1,400 different hyperbaric facilities in the United States right now. It is 2 p.m. And if you can imagine in your schedule at 2 p.m., there's probably, 3 treatments at each of those facilities. Everything's running smoothly, and we don't hear about it in the news. And that's probably the same thing with flights. I can't even tell you how many airplanes there are right now over Texas in the air right now, and everything's going well until it doesn't, because it is catastrophic. And that is what we have to prevent, is just making sure that we are making sure that we don't have little incidents that add up to the big catastrophic incident that's newsworthy and ends people's careers and lives, unfortunately. So now we'll have a little talk about what this looks like. What are the little things that we could be missing that could be setting ourselves up for a disaster? The big thing is skipping or rushing your safety check. Your pre-dive checklist is the most important part of your safety program, really. If you are following through with that every single time and checking vitals, asking them all these screening questions, it can kind of get annoying sometimes to them, especially if it's their 30th dive. But you have to be really diligent with that and ask every single time, do you have anything on you? Are you on any medications, any new implanted medical devices? You cannot skip that no matter how many times that patient has dove, because you just never know. You could be off that day, they could be kind of off that day. Those are put in place as controls to make sure that we aren't missing the mark on our safety standards. Another big part of that too is not allowing people to rush you. If the patients get there late, that's okay. Sorry, but you still have to go through every single step of that. If your office manager is saying, oh, they're here, you have to get them back, rush, 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 or if your program director is saying that, nope, sorry, we can't rush safety steps. You have to take time, or don't do it at all, honestly. Make sure that you are following through with every part of your safety program, pre-dive, post-dive, when it comes to your chamber checkoffs and beginning of the day. I have a strict rule, patients are not allowed to come back until those checkoffs are done. We don't need any kind of distractions. We don't need anyone asking us questions. The chamber checkoffs, every kind of pre-treatment, anything needs to be done with a lot of focus and intention. We don't want to allow anything that's not approved inside the chamber. And that means creative workarounds too. If it's not approved, if it has a high fuel load, if it generates heat, it just shouldn't go in the chamber. There are certain special exceptions where, if someone has something implanted and you have to get very creative, that's something for your medical director and your safety officer to figure out. But, 99% of the time, no, it's not going in. No matter how nicely someone asks you, if a patient says, well, I'm not going to dive then, okay, that's unfortunate, but we can't make shortcuts or compromises on the safety of our patient and our facility and the staff. If you have a near miss in your facility, very important to document it. Sometimes it is embarrassing to admit like, ooh, I missed something, and then having to write up a report on it. But that honest accountability process keeps you safe and educates everyone else. In my career, I have had a near miss. It wasn't a huge one, but it was something that I had to document and say, hey, this got missed during the process, and I learned from it, and now I talk to everyone else about it. We have safety meetings where, we have our 6 different facilities, and we all come together and talk about the last month. What did you encounter? What new implanted medical devices are there? And just kind of, check each other's notes and figure out what's going on. We have a log where we track our near misses or any adverse effects or reactions, and we debrief about that as a group. And that's really important to do. If you were kind of hiding those things, we would never be able to learn from them. And then we don't want to normalize any of these unsafe behaviors. I have come into programs before where I got there and I heard this story of, well, we've always done it this way. We've always used linen that was 60% polyester and only 40% cotton. Well, we've always let people bring street clothes in as long as they're 100% cotton. Well, you got lucky, but we're not going to do it that way anymore. And never be afraid to speak up and say that. And that's something we'll talk about here in a little bit. There was another instance too where we had hired someone a few years back who had previously come from another program. And they told me, well, we don't have to check our patients' grounds before they go inside the chamber because the chamber itself is grounded. So we don't have to check that the patient is grounded themselves. Well, they got very lucky that that was their practice and everything was always fine. But that doesn't mean that you should be lenient. Once again, just because we've always done it that way, or that's where I did it, where I came from, you have to follow the standards of the NFPA and what the UHMS recommends as well. And there should be no workarounds or wiggle room for those standards. So we talked a lot about what you shouldn't do. We'll wrap up here with what you should be doing. So the biggest thing is to follow protocols and your SOPs and standards every single time. It should not be anything that is negotiable at your facility. You should have those standards and hold them very close to your heart. I think really where this comes into play quite a bit is the difference between comfort and complacency. So when we get comfortable with our patients, that's great. They come in, how was your son's basketball game last weekend? You can talk to them and joke around and have a nice time, but that doesn't mean that we get complacent with those patients. I have long preached that the most dangerous time during your patient's treatment is not during the first 5 dives. Truth be told, I think during those first 5-10 dives, after you've gone through hopefully a very in-depth talked with them about the potential risks and talk about you can't bring this in here because it could cause a chamber fire. They're quaking in their boots just a little bit, and they're a little bit nervous about, put deodorant on yesterday and I showered. I hope it's all off of my body now. So usually your patients are going to be pretty wary for the first couple of dives. And you are also going to be extra diligent because this is a new person. So you're going to be giving them the stare down every time to make sure they don't have anything weird on, smelling them to make sure there's no cologne. So that usually is not the most dangerous part. Where it gets a little dicey potentially is after their 30-second dive. They come in, y'all chat, you get vitals taken, you're having a nice time, ask them, what do you want to watch on TV today? We're still watching MASH. And that's when we miss all of our safety cues because we got complacent. We got overly comfortable with our patients and we started trusting them and they started trusting us a little bit too much. And that's when you miss things because they've dove 32 times and nothing bad has ever happened. And this is just a nice time. I come and I chat with my friends. And that's when they forget that they have a lighter in their pocket. That's when they forget. And that's when you forget. So just take that to mind that you need to every single time, no matter what patient it is, how many times they've been there, you have to ask every single time. Do not be afraid to speak up if something feels wrong or if someone is asking you to do something that doesn't sit right with you. If you are a new tech or a new safety director and you have all this fresh education and you're going into an existing program where they tell you, well, we've always done things like this and it's fine. You don't have to worry about the linen. They can bring that from home. It's okay. Nope. Stand your ground. And if they tell you we're going to fire you, well, you can find another job and maybe you can get back at them in another way. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be in jail and you're not going to have, your license taken away because something caught on fire. You don't want to be associated with a program that doesn't take safety seriously anyway, honestly. So just stick to your guns. Make sure, of course, that you know what you're talking about before you go 10 toes down on business like that. But make sure that you know what you're talking about and you have references. There are so many different things you can use. You have your NFPA 99, you have the UHMS frequently asked questions. Usually anything that you have thought of, someone else has already thought of too. And you have those as references if something comes up that seems questionable. And just keep in mind, if you are the safety director, the safety officer, whatever you want to call it, you have the final say. You have the power to restrict items. And it doesn't matter who's telling you to put it in the chamber. If it's your medical director that's telling you, I want this in the chamber, and you know for sure that this is something that's not safe, you have to stand on business and tell them no, and just deal with, whatever shakes out of that. Do not be afraid to speak up, stand up for yourself and your patients. Always treat near misses as warnings. We talked about that, documentation, sharing your experiences with your coworkers. Bottom line here, consistency is safety. It gets very boring sometimes. We won't dance around that fact. It gets frustrating to ask the same question day in and day out, but ultimately it's what keeps everyone safe and protected. Well, I hope you enjoyed my little safety spiel, and we'll be back talking about more of the legal ramifications of these types of things with Dr. Giddley in our next session. Have a good one.